Because when Chrisean Rock casually said she's stepping into boxing, she didn't stop at gloves and training. She dragged Ryan Garcia, Tank Davis, and straight-up street fight energy into the conversation like she was reading off a forbidden script nobody was supposed to hear yet. This wasn't a normal celebrity announcement. This was the kind of moment where people stop scrolling and say, "Hold on, did she really just say that?" And once it sinks in, panic replaces laughter. Because boxing is not a playground. It doesn't reward hype, it punishes delusion. Chrisean already lives in chaos. Drama follows her like a shadow. Headlines chase her harder than paparazzi. But boxing doesn't care who you are outside the ring. It either crowns you or crushes you, sometimes both in the same night. So when she said road to a world title, the boxing world didn't clap. It squinted. Then came the words that flipped the switch. Street fight mentality. That's when this stopped sounding like influencer boxing and started sounding like a collision warning. Because street confidence and ring discipline are two very different beasts, and confusing them has ended careers before they even started. This didn't feel like content. It felt like the opening scene of a documentary nobody asked for but everyone's about to watch. And once you hear what she said about Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis, you realize something fast. This isn't about boxing anymore. Chrisean Rock didn't walk into boxing through the front door. She kicked the side entrance in and acted like it was always hers. One sentence, dropped casually, turned a quiet boxing conversation into a siren. No press tour. No glossy rollout, just raw confidence wrapped in chaos. And suddenly everybody had an opinion they didn't know they were holding. The moment she said road to a world title, people laughed first. That laugh didn't last long. It morphed into confusion, then skepticism, then something dangerously close to concern. Because boxing isn't a vibe, it's a grinder. It chews up ego and spits out excuses. And when someone with a reputation built on unpredictability says they're chasing belts, the sport doesn't clap, it braces. This wasn't just about ambition. It was about timing. Chrisean didn't say this after years of quiet training clips or whispered gym sightings. She said it out loud, on camera, with the confidence of someone who either knows something we don't, or doesn't realize what's coming. And in boxing, both possibilities are equally terrifying. Her background matters here. Chrisean is not new to pressure. She's lived inside controversy so long it stopped feeling like pressure and started feeling like oxygen. Viral moments, public breakdowns, explosive relationships. She's been surviving in a world where attention is currency and chaos is leverage. But boxing doesn't care about survivability. It cares about control. And that's where the tension starts tightening. Because control is the one thing Chrisean has never been known for. And the one thing boxing demands before it gives you anything back. So when she talked about gloves, discipline, and then casually slid into street mentality, it felt like two worlds colliding at full speed. That street talk is what shook people. Not because fighters don't come from rough environments, many of the greatest ever did. But because the ring is where street instincts are supposed to be refined, not glorified. Boxing is about restraint disguised as violence. Street fighting is chaos pretending to be strength. Mixing the two publicly isn't edgy, it's dangerous branding. And then came the names. Ryan Garcia, Tank Davis. That wasn't analysis. That wasn't commentary. That was provocation. Those names carry weight. They pull cameras. They trigger fan bases. And when Chrisean said them with that tone, not respectful, not dismissive, just confident, it sent a ripple through boxing spaces that weren't even paying attention to her 5 minutes earlier. Suddenly, this wasn't celebrity boxing curiosity. This was weight. Why does this feel different? Clips started circulating immediately. Every word slowed down. Every pause replayed. People weren't listening anymore. They were hunting, looking for tells, for signs this was clout chasing, or worse. Signs at WAS and single quotes T.comment sections turned into ideological battlegrounds. One side said she was disrespecting the sport. trivializing years of sacrifice with Instagram confidence. The other side said boxing needs chaos, needs personalities, needs someone who doesn't ask permission. And hovering above both sides was a quiet fear: what if she's serious? Because seriousness changes everything. Promoters stayed quiet. Trainers made vague comments. Fighters laughed it off publicly while side-eyeing privately. That's the boxing ecosystem. When something unpredictable enters the room, nobody wants to be the first to acknowledge it and accidentally legitimize it. Chrisean didn't backtrack. She didn't clarify. She didn't soften the message. She leaned into it by not leaning into anything at all. No apology. No explanation. No, I meant it metaphorically. Just forward motion. And that silence after speaking loudly. That's when narratives start writing themselves. People assume the worst, the best, and everything in between, sometimes all in the same sentence. The dangerous thing about this moment is that it forced boxing to look at itself. Because the sport loves authenticity until it shows up unpolished. It celebrates rags to riches stories until the edges are too sharp. And Chrisean's edges are razor blade sharp. This wasn't a fairy tale origin story. This was a question mark with gloves on. Was she entering boxing to conquer it? To exploit it? Or to expose something uncomfortable about how fame now interacts with legacy? Every possibility made people uneasy. And underneath all the jokes, memes, and hot takes was a quiet realization. This wasn't about whether Chrisean could fight. It was about whether boxing could absorb someone like her without losing its grip on what it claims to be. Because if she succeeds, the rules change. And if she fails, it won't be gentle. This journey didn't begin with training footage or inspirational quotes. It began with disruption. And disruption never asks permission. It just shows up and dares you to respond. By the end of that first wave of reactions, one thing was undeniable. This wasn't a moment that could be ignored. Boxing had been challenged without being directly challenged. And whether Chrisean knew it or not, she had just placed herself at the center of a conversation that doesn't forgive hesitation. The moment that first wave hit, the conversation stopped being curious and started getting territorial. Boxing Twitter, hip-hop spaces, celebrity blogs, everybody grabbed a corner like this was already a fight night. And the wildest part, Chrisean didn't even throw a punch yet. She just existed loudly, and that alone was enough to shake rooms she'd never been invited into. Memes exploded before logic could catch up. Clips of her talking about boxing got chopped, slowed, looped, captioned. One edit made it look like she was calling out the entire lightweight division with a smirk. Another mashed her words over old Ryan Garcia knockdowns like it was a trailer nobody cleared. Tank Davis fans went defensive instantly, not because she threatened Tank, but because she mentioned him. In boxing culture, saying a name without permission is already a sin. And here's where it got interesting. The reactions weren't uniform. They were revealing. Some fighters laughed it off publicly, posting jokes and emojis, but that laughter felt tight, controlled, like people laughing in a meeting they don't actually find funny. Because deep down, they understood something casual fans didn't. The tension changes leverage. And Chrisean has a tension like gasoline has fire. Influencers jumped in pretending to analyze while clearly enjoying the chaos. Podcasts ran with clickbait angles. Blogs framed it as a joke, then quietly updated headlines when engagement spiked. Nobody wanted to be the one who dismissed it too hard and looked foolish later. Because the moment you call something impossible, you give it fuel. Then came the wild comparisons. People started stacking her against past celebrity boxing disasters and successes, but none of them fit. She didn't move like an influencer chasing checks. She didn't talk like a YouTuber building a fight narrative. Her energy wasn't playful, it was confrontational, even when she wasn't confronting anyone directly. That's what unsettled people. She wasn't selling a fight. She was selling belief. And belief is dangerous in boxing because belief has broken more jaws than hype ever did. The street fight talk became the flashpoint. Analysts tried to sound reasonable, explaining that street instincts don't translate cleanly into professional boxing. True. But the way she said it wasn't technical. it was psychological. She wasn't claiming street fights make champions. She was saying fear doesn't control her. That's a different argument entirely. Fear is the real currency in boxing. Everyone has hands. Everyone has conditioning. But fear decides who hesitates for half a second, and half a second gets people put to sleep. That's why the Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis mentions kept echoing. Those names represent two extremes of modern boxing: speed, flash, vulnerability on one side, power, patience, destruction on the other. When Chrisean spoke about them without reverence or dismissal, just matter-of-fact confidence, it felt like she wasn't measuring herself against them physically. She was measuring herself mentally, and the internet felt that shift. Suddenly, this wasn't about can she box. It became what happens if she refuses to be intimidated. Comment sections turned philosophical in the most chaotic way possible. Philosophical in the most chaotic way possible. 1 minute people were arguing about footwork and amateur rankings. The next minute someone was saying boxing needs personalities again, or it's dead. Someone else replied that boxing doesn't need chaos, it needs respect. Meanwhile, the algorithms quietly pushed the clips harder. Because controversy is their favorite employee, the outraged crowd arrived late but loud. They accused her of disrespecting fighters who sacrificed everything for belts. They framed it as clout theft, as attention hijacking, as someone skipping the line. And here's the irony: every angry post boosted her visibility. Every rant extended her reach. Boxing fans who'd never searched her name before suddenly knew exactly who she was. That's how cultural invasions work. They don't ask permission. They show up, offend everyone, and dare the system to respond. Behind the scenes, the tone shifted even more. Trainers started dropping cryptic comments about discipline and humility. Promoters were asked questions they weren't prepared for and gave answers that sounded like carefully folded napkins. No commitments, no denials, just distance. Because acknowledging her meant legitimizing the conversation, and ignoring her meant letting it grow unchecked. Chrisean stayed quiet. No long explanations. No apology tour. No let me clarify what I meant. She let the noise do the talking. That silence didn't calm things down, it elevated them. Because when someone doesn't defend themselves, people assume one of two things: confidence or delusion. And nobody could agree which one this was. Fan edits got bolder. Jokes got sharper. Think pieces got longer. Some people started imagining the unthinkable. What if she actually trains seriously? What if she sticks around? What if she eats punches, bleeds, gets embarrassed, and still comes back? Because boxing history is full of people who weren't supposed to last and didn't get the memo. At that point, the conversation stopped being about Chrisean alone. It became about gatekeeping. Who gets to say they belong in boxing? Who decides when ambition becomes disrespect? And why does fame scare purists more than incompetence? Those questions didn't have clean answers, and that's why this moment stuck. It wasn't just drama, it was a mirror. And boxing, like most institutions, doesn't love mirrors unless it likes what it sees. By the end of this phase, the narrative had mutated again. She wasn't just a celebrity testing the waters. She was a disruptor forcing the sport to explain itself. And the scariest part, she hadn't even stepped into a real gym on camera yet. No sweat montage. No coach reveal. No first day humility speech. Just tension. And tension, in boxing, always looks for a place to land. Because once attention reaches this level, there are only two outcomes: exposure or escalation. And everything about this moment suggested the escalation hadn't even warmed up yet. By the time the noise started thinning out, the impact was already permanent. This wasn't one of those viral moments that burns bright and disappears by the weekend. This one stuck because it rewired how people looked at everyone involved, including boxing itself. Chrisean didn't need to win a fight to change the conversation. She just needed to survive the backlash, and she did. The aftermath wasn't loud explosions, it was quiet shifts. Trainers who laughed it off stopped joking. Promoters who avoided questions started choosing their words more carefully. Media outlets that dismissed it as clout pivoted into what-if mode. Because once something refuses to die, the industry stops mocking it and starts monitoring it. Her reputation didn't soften, it hardened. People stopped calling her unserious and started calling her unpredictable, which in boxing is a backhanded compliment. Fighters fear unpredictability more than skill gaps. Because you can train for technique, you can't train for someone who doesn't move the way you expect. And then came the relationship ripple effects. Some collaborators quietly stepped back, not wanting their names attached to a moment that might explode later. Others leaned in, sensing opportunity. That's how you know perception has shifted, when proximity becomes a risk calculation. Suddenly, being around Chrisean wasn't just about clout. It was about timing. Meanwhile, fans recalibrated. Supporters framed her as fearless, someone finally refusing to bow to boxing's unspoken rules. Critics dug deeper, waiting for proof she couldn't deliver. And the neutrals. They stayed quiet but kept watching. Because neutrality doesn't mean disinterest, it means anticipation. The Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis names didn't fade either. They lingered like echoes, not because she challenged them directly, she didn't, but because mentioning them forced comparisons people weren't ready to have. It raised uncomfortable questions about fame, access, and mental toughness, about who's protected by legacy and who has to earn everything the hard way. And here's the uncomfortable truth the sport had to face: boxing has always flirted with chaos. It just prefers chaos that looks traditional. Chrisean and didn't fit the mold. She cracked it. She exposed how quickly boxing draws lines when the disruption doesn't come wrapped in history or amateur credentials. And whether you think that's fair or necessary depends entirely on which side of the gate you're standing on. What happened next wasn't dramatic, it was inevitable. The story stopped being about whether she could box and became about whether she'd commit. Consistency became the real test, because boxing forgives ignorance faster than it forgives quitting. If she vanished, the critics would win. If she stayed, even through losses, the narrative would flip again. And everyone knew it. Every post she made after that moment was weighed. Every silence interpreted. Every hint of training magnified. She didn't need to say much anymore. The audience had already written 10 versions of her future, and they were waiting to see which one survived contact with reality. The chaos cooled, but the tension didn't. This wasn't closure. It was positioning. Chrisean had placed herself at the edge of boxing's comfort zone and refused to step back. Whether she falls off that edge or builds something new, there is the part nobody knows yet. And that's why this story still matters, because boxing doesn't change overnight. It changes when pressure refuses to leave. Chrisean Rock didn't ask for respect. She didn't beg for acceptance. She didn't explain herself into safety. She entered the conversation and let the sport decide how uncomfortable it wanted to be. And in a world where celebrity usually dilutes competition, she did the opposite. She made it heavier. This journey didn't end with gloves on or gloves off. It ended with a question hanging in the air. Is boxing about who's qualified, or about who's willing to endure what comes next? Because one thing is certain, once you disrupt a system this publicly, there's no going back to being ignored. If you made it this far, you already know this wasn't just a story, it was a pressure test. Not for Chrisean, for boxing, for the internet, for everyone who thinks they know who belongs where. Because moments like this don't fade. They rearrange the room. So now I need you in the comments. Tell me straight, is Chrisean Rock fearless or reckless? Is this the start of something real, or a collision waiting to happen? And don't play it safe, drop your wildest prediction. Because history shows the internet always remembers who called it early. And while you're at it, smash that like button like it owes you money. Because the algorithm only respects commitment. If you're still watching without subscribing, you're basically shadowboxing. Hit that subscribe button and step into the ring with us. This is where stories don't get watered down, where chaos gets decoded, where today's rumor turns into tomorrow's headline. Keep your notifications on, because when this situation evolves, and trust me, it will, you don't want to hear about it late. You want to be here when it breaks. This is Celeb Ruckus, where disruption isn't the side effect. It's the main event effect. It's the main event.